system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful
protest?
President Trump,
No, it's
I'm not
not,
asking,
but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment.
Fine.
This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else, and he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas, and frankly, very sick ideas, and really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but
Lord.
The reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
Violent
Are you
crime.
in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You following
Are you in
it, and a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go
yes,
ahead,
I'm
say
in
it.
favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Law
and order with justice, where people get treated fairly.
Okay.
And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more in ours.
All right, we're down. Mr. President, you're going to. Mr. President,
every record in the book.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died, shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have
We would
our
run it
suburbs
the
would
way-
be gone. By the way,
Suburbs.
our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've
He
never
would
seen
know a
before.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
I was
better.
raised.
Go ahead.
I was,
Wait a minute.
I was
So much
raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and/or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what
in
they're talking about, Chris. That's
well,
not what
that's-
they're
that's
He's talking
exactly-
about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law
Would you
support.
look?
He has no law enforcement
That's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
look,
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go
Look,
ahead.
look.
Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think
All right.
about it.
Look,
Name
folks,
one law enforcement group that came out and
I
supported
think, gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the
There aren't.
moderator's
I don't think
role,
there
and
are any.
I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned
We're not
into
peaceful.
riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people,
He's never
the
said
leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here,
Oh, really?
here's the
But
thing.
I sent in the
wait, I
U.S.
asked him a
Marshals to
question.
get the killer
No,
of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland
President
wouldn't do
Trump,
anything.
please
I had to send in
interrupt-
the U.S. Marshals.
President
They took
Trump,
care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by